Hello and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the third Shorty September reading vlog. So far Shorty September has been going really well for me. I've read some really banging books, so I'm hoping to continue that. I'm back at work, so it's going to be a bit more just about the books and less, other things in this vlog. So I hope that's okay. And my plan is to fill in the prompt sheet. I have so far read 6 books and I've fulfilled 5 of the prompts here and one and the bonus prompt. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more prompts to go. So what I want to do is, rather than pick books at random, I'm going to really focus on the prompts themselves. But I haven't abandoned the cup just yet. What I've done is I have put all the prompts on the paper slips, and I'm gonna pick a random prompt right now rather than picking a random book. So yeah, let's see what my next prompt will be. Let's go for the Micro or Taylor Swift shorts, which was read a poetry book or read a book with a breakup in it. Let me grab the book I had in mind for this. So I'll be reading The Women of Brewster Place by Gloria and Naylor, and this is one of those occasions where I took a book I really wanted to read and tried to fit it into one of the prompts. So I had a little Google search to see if there was a breakup in this book, and there is. So that's the book I'll be reading for the Taylor Swift shorts. And this book, I think, is basically interconnected short stories of a group of women all living on the same street or the same block. It's a book I've been wanting to read for a really long time, so I'm glad to finally get to it. So I just finished The Women of Brewster Place by Gloria and Naylor, and this was gorgeous, just stunning. This is a collection of interlinked short stories. It is set in Brewster Place, which is this kind of run-down apartment block set in an unnamed town in America. It's kind of forgotten and dilapidated, and the people who live there, they don't exactly live there by choice. They either couldn't afford to live anywhere else, or they weren't welcome other places. And every story centers around one of the women living in Brewster Place. I think there's 7 or 8 stories in here, and you can read them all as separate stories, but they do connect with each other in that they are all set in the same place, and the women connect in each other's lives. As you may expect from the premise of the book, these women did and still do not have easy lives. There's a lot of tragic and terrible things happening in this book, and I should warn you that there's quite a few content warnings for this. Towards the end there is a rape scene that I found very difficult to read in particular, but there's other things as well, and I would suggest checking out the content warnings before picking up this book, just in case there is something that is triggering to you. But what I found so impressive about this book is that Gloria Naylor finds a way to go from deeply, deeply sad and heart-wrenching to something more hopeful and light and joyous and even sometimes funny. This book has a really great sense of humor, and the dialogue was really sharp sometimes, but I could go from laughing to crying to laughing again in like a few pages. And I think to pull that off without becoming cliche or without it grating on you, you have to be a really great writer. There's a real sense of sisterhood and resilience in these stories. You know, other than living in the same building, these women don't initially have a lot in common. You know, they don't have a lot to do with each other, but they all have this shared wish to belong, to have a community, and to find a reprieve from the grief and the struggles in their lives. And even though they've all experienced some really terrible things, they still have a generosity to them, and a way to stay open and to stay vulnerable. Yeah, I think all these women are just very well portrayed, very complex and layered. Women who have lived full lives, and that really comes across to the page. Even though you don't spend a lot of time with each of these women. Yeah, I thought this was beautifully written. The only thing I didn't like was that towards the end and like the last 5 pages or so, the writing gets a bit surreal, which I didn't really care for because I didn't think it fitted in with the rest of the book, and it confused me a little bit. So yeah, that was the only thing that I was like, I'm not sure about that. But yeah, other than that, I really, really love this, and I'm glad I finally read it. So that was that. And I'm gonna pick my next book now. These my cups. Got, you know, I think the 5 or 6 remaining prompts in here. And next we're going to read that one, which is the Supermarket 2-pack shorts bundle. I have to make sure I say that right. Which I think was the non-fiction that fits another one of the books you've read, or that ties in. Let me just read it. Read a non-fiction book that ties in with another of your shorties. And for this, I'll be reading a book called The Strong Black Woman, something along those lines. It's called The Strong Black Woman: How a Myth Endangers the Physical and Mental Health of Black Women by Marita. I think the title is kind of self-explanatory, and I'm tying this in with the Journal of a Queer Black Nurse, because I said about that book that I found the topic really interesting, and I wanted to explore it more, and I think this book is doing exactly that. So yeah, that will be my next shorty, and I'll check in with you once I've read it. Happy autumn equinox. I just wanted to show off a little autumn table that I made with some nice candles. I went to the forest and gathered some concords and acorns and stuff, and got some crystals, nice cards, and also some really pretty flowers. Yeah, I think it looks really nice. I thought I would actually like celebrate the autumn equinox today. I kind of like the idea of getting more into the wheel of the year Sabbath holidays, and like mark the passing of the time in that way. So yeah, I made this nice little table, and I'm gonna make a beetroot goat's cheese loaf later today, which hopefully will be delicious. Okay, that looks about right. I don't know if you can see it, but that's what happens when it says great beetroot. Thank goodness it's not a library book. Yeah, looks pretty tasty. I'm gonna try a bit. It does look a lot less red than I expected it to be. So I wonder if like the beetroot is not very evenly distributed, and I'm gonna have more beetroot in other parts. Still looks very tasty though. Just wanted to tell you that I did finish The Strong Black Woman, which I thought was brilliant, but I'm not really in the mood right now to like formulate my thoughts around it and tell you about this book, possibly because I'm just hungry, so I'll do that later when I'm in the mood. But I did want to pick a new book to read, so I've got my cup, which is looking rather empty with only 5 prompts in it left. So let's see what my next book will be. Let's go for this one. That is The Zip of Trousers, which was a book with a title that could be shorter, and I thought I would do a reread for that and read Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson, because that title could be shorter. In fact, Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit is a sentence that is completely unnecessary, because we know that oranges are not the only fruit. You could have just called this book Oranges. So yeah, that's what I'll be reading for that prompt. Okay, I have some catching up to do. First, let's talk about The Strong Black Woman, How a Myth Endangers the Physical and Mental Health of Black Women by Marita. I read this for a book that pairs with another book you've read for Shorty September, and I read The Journal of a Queer Black Nurse by Brittany Daniels earlier this month, and I wanted to read more about racism in the medical field and how that stereotype of the strong black woman would influence how someone got treated by doctors and other healthcare professionals. Now, this book turned out to be a lot more personal anecdotes of the authors and stories of other people she talks to, rather than having a very scientific approach, which I was hoping for. It was kind of more a mix of essays and maybe almost like a self-help book. So it wasn't what I expected it to be, but I think once I kind of switched my mind to it being something different, I really enjoyed it and I thought it was very well done. I think this is a book written for black women by a black woman, and hey, if I want to read it and learn something along the way, that's great, but I don't think it's necessarily a book that was meant for me. I think it's a book for black women to recognize themselves in, to see their mothers and their aunts and grandmothers and sisters and ancestors, and to acknowledge the sacrifices they have made, and to move forward with self-compassion and self-care. Yeah, and for me it was great to learn things that were basically blatantly obvious, but I haven't really ever considered, because I am a white person and this book deals with things that I don't have to deal with on a personal level. Like this book talks about how black people are more at risk for heart disease, and that was something that I hadn't heard before, and I kind of wondered why that would be. And then the author tells me that one of the reasons is that having to deal with racism is stressful, and stress is one of the biggest reasons for heart problems, which is just so simple and so obvious that, you know, it's kind of embarrassing that I never thought of that. There's also a part in the book where the author talks about rape and sexual assault, and how a lot of black women don't want to report against black men because of the history of black men being falsely accused by white people, and the way black men are profiled and treated by the police and the legal system. So these women struggle with the duality of wanting safety for themselves and justice for the crime that has been committed against them, you know, personally on the one hand, but their loyalty and support to black men in a cultural sense on the other hand. The author mentions the mothers and sisters of black people who have died at the hands of police brutality, and how they not only have to deal with this unspeakable pain of losing a child, but then they also had to then grieve in public, and had to do it in a way that was media friendly, you know, talk about it on TV shows and interviews, and to be a role model in the Black Lives Matter and, you know, activism. Why does society laud them for being the strong ones, and maybe even expects it of them? You know, why, when they are experiencing maybe possibly the most difficult grief they will ever go through. So it just gives different types of examples on the strong black woman myth, how it originated, how it is sustained in the current cultural climate, and the harm it can cause. And you know, the author just uses a lot of personal examples and stories of others to demonstrate what she's writing about. I thought it was very interesting. It's a quick and accessible read in regards to the writing, but it is a book that lingers a lot. I still feel like I want to read a more scientific book on the topic. Coincidentally, I went to the International Literature Festival in Utrecht this weekend, where I saw a talk with Leah Liverpool, who has just published a book, or her book recently got published into Dutch, called Systemic: How Racism Makes Us Sick, and that was a very interesting conversation. The other author in that panel was Babs Gons, who is the current Dutch poet laureate, and you know, I would go and talk that's just her, but in this case it was her and the moderator basically just fangirling over Leal Liverpool's book. So yeah, I'm very keen to read that one. I also went to a talk about Afrofuturism and the power of speculative fiction by Black or writers of color, where some really interesting things were said as well, and I came away with a lot of recommendations of books to read. I went to a live recording of a bookish podcast, which was super fun. I hadn't actually listened to this podcast before, but now, you know, I'm already looking through their back catalogue to see which episodes I want to catch up on. Because yeah, I really did enjoy the way they talked about the book. Yeah, and I met up with a couple of Dutch bookstagrams, which were a lot of fun. Oh, and I got a tote bag. It's this way around. So yeah, that was just a tiny little side tangent of the International Literature Festival. I did also finish Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson, which was a reread for me. I really love this book. I love Winterson's writing style. It's her debut novel, and it's what you would now call autofiction. It's about a girl named Jeanette, and she lives in a town in the north of England where she lives with her adoptive parents, and it's mainly about her mother, Mrs. Winterson. There is a father around, but he doesn't really play a big role, at least not, you know, in the book. Her mother is a devout Christian. I can't remember the exact denomination. I think it was Pentecost. You know, in any case, she was very devout. She was very active in her church and the community. She had very clear thoughts on what's right and what's wrong, what's a good Christian and what's not, what is the work of the Lord and what is the work of the devil. And she was very black and white in that, and very vocal about it too, as in, you know, she really judged people who didn't agree with her. So yeah, that was the household that Jeanette grew up in. She was also very active in her church and kind of on her way to become a missionary, until she finds out that she fancies girls. And you can imagine how that goes with her mother. So yeah, that's kind of the premise of this book. So it's a coming of age story, but then the author also puts in kind of a fairy tale, legend-like story that runs parallel to the main story, which I really loved. I feel like once the story kind of gets too hard to tell in a more realistic way, she reverts to the more fairy tale-esque stories to have a way to speak about what happened to her. I thought it was just a really interesting combination of styles, and it really speaks to the power of storytelling. And yeah, I think that's ultimately what this book is trying to do. Talk about the power of storytelling and the value of books and literature to make sense of the world that is happening. You know, to make sense of the world and what is happening in your life. Yeah, I really, really love this. Yeah, so that's that one, and I think I will end the vlog here. There is still like a day and a half left in September, but I don't think I will realistically finish another book. So yeah, I'll end it here. Let's recap the prompt sheet. I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the bonus one, so 9 of the prompts. So I didn't entirely finish it, but I don't think it's bad at all. I also did actually buy the book for the paperback short, which was Buy a Book and Read It, so that's another half a point maybe. I'll show you what I got, because I was going to do that once I got to the prompt, but I didn't, so I'll show you what I got. I got it wrapped, not in a paper bag, but I did get some paper around it. I ended up getting 2 books. One was Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I have read Foster and I really wanted to read some more of her, so I picked up this one. And then the other one was this one. This is Now in November by Josephine Johnson, and this is the Dutch translation, which came out a couple of months ago, fairly recently. I have heard, I think it was Greg of Supposedly Fun, and someone else, I think it was Kim, Middle of the Book March, really talked positively about this book, and it was also a staff recommendation, so yeah, I snatched this one as well. And this is just very nicely published as well. It has nice like yellow on the inside. Yeah, it's a nice quality book. So yeah, those were the two books I got for a little Shorty September haul. So yeah, a little book haul to end the video with. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks for Bert and Heather for hosting another great edition for Shorty September. I really loved watching their vlogs as well and their content. If you haven't checked it out, which would be really weird because, you know, why would you watch my videos but not theirs? That's weird. Yeah, it is truly one of my favorite reading events of the year, and I am already looking forward to next year. So yeah, that's it for today. I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.